Bobby Skinner, talking Giants. Used to saying doing another draft film breakdown, but we're looking at Dexter Lawrence. We're talking about Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence, according to Adam Schefter, gets a 4-year, $90 million contract that locks him up with the Giants for the next 5 years through 2027. $60 million of it is guaranteed. Obviously well-deserved for Dexter Lawrence. Had an all-pro season, was the Giants' best defensive player in the playoff push, and you can argue he had the best just season out of all players in general, even more so than Andrew Thomas, who was another guy who had an all-pro. Another guy who should get paid. Get my man paid. So what the deal looks like right now, we don't know the structure of it, but again, we know $60 million guaranteed, and it's $22.5 million average annual value. So it's essentially the exact same deal that Daron Payne got. And with Jeffrey Simmons, who's a great defensive tackle for the Texans, obviously from that same draft class, picked within, I think, but like between 2 or 3 picks. Same guaranteed as Jeffrey Simmons, but Jeffrey Simmons got $1 million more on an average annual value basis. So Dex got 22.5. Jeff Simmons got $23.5 million. So why is this well-deserved besides just spitting out best player, all-pro? First, I always forget to do this. Like and subscribe. Do it right now. Help me out. Let's look at pass rushing stats for this year for a nose tackle and all defensive tackles in general. 7.5 sacks, which was 5th for defensive tackles. 22 quarterback hits, which was 1st for defensive tackles. Not only 1st, but 1st for defensive tackles by 7. 32 pressures, which was 7th for defensive tackles. And when you combine all three, that's 62 sacks, hits, and pressures, second to only Chris Jones in the NFL. And I think that Chris Jones guy who took 2nd in Defensive Player of the Year voting might be pretty damn good. So it is well-deserved for the 2019 first-round pick in Dexter Lawrence. And in the run game, right? Basically, him and Leonard Williams were the team's only run defense. They had no other defensive lineman behind them. And then even Leonard Williams, he missed games this year. So Dex was the only run defense for a portion of this season. You know, teams averaged 6.8 yards per carry against the Giants when Dexter Lawrence was off the field. That's really, really bad. Now, it was bad with Dexter Lawrence, but he was that. And then in the playoff game, like, he dominated the playoff game, right? Like, just from start to finish was wrecking that game and got him a lot of recognition around the league. So, and Dex was always a good player for the Giants, but he wasn't really putting up the production, right? He was a guy you watch film and like, man, this guy's really good, not great. This year he became a great player, which is, going into the season, we're like, that's the challenge for Dexter Lawrence. And you really do see it happens with defensive tackles where they'll be good players, and then around the age that Dex is now, that's when they'll pop and become those, take that next step. Now, most of them aren't taking the step to where Dexter Lawrence got, and that's why they're not getting the contract that Dex got. But credit to him. That move to nose tackle really did wonders, closing the space between the offensive lineman and him. Andre Patterson, who's maybe the most well-respected defensive line coach in the NFL, was with the Vikings for a long time. Just let him have career highs in every single statistical category that Dex could have. Now, let's talk about the money and how does this affect the Giants' money right now. So right now, the Giants have $1.8 million in cap space, and they need about $3.2 million for their draft class. So because their draft class costs more than that, but because there's a rule in the NFL where only your top 51 players count against the cap until you get the cut down day. That $11 million doesn't go straight against the cap because a lot of them are replacing minimum contracts. So they need about $3.2 million for their draft class. So right now, if they were to sign their whole draft class right now, that would put them at negative $1.4 million. I would think that this Dexter Lawrence contract gives them some breathing room, that they took some money from this 5th-year option year and push that into future years, to create some cap space. Because the Giants have to get cap space, one, to sign their class, but you need about $5 million to get through the season to, make those, hey, we're calling up practice squad guys. We're bringing in this vet minimum like Fabian Moreau last year or Jalen Smith would be examples of that. So it'll be interesting to see if this is enough to not touch Leonard Williams' contract, right? Like, if you freed up $5 million from this year from Dexter Lawrence's contract, that would put you at $3.6 million of cap space, right? And like you said, you want to get to that $5 million mark to work with during the season. But everyone wants to point to Leonard Williams as the way to get there and restructure him. And Leonard Williams is not going to take a cheap contract, right? Like it's going to, if he was going to re-sign with the Giants and extend, that number is starting with a 2, right? On a year-to-year basis, it just is. That's what he's making now. He's not going to get the Dexter Lawrence contract, but Leonard Williams, and rightfully so, should not take any type of pay cut. Test the free market. Javon Hargrave just got $21 million a year at 30 years old from the 49ers after being with the Eagles. So Leonard Williams shouldn't settle. So I don't want to add a void year to Leonard Williams' contract, because extending him is just easier said than done. I don't want to add more void money to it because there is already void money. So if you're at $3.6 million, if you freed $5 million for the Dex contract, you could cut Darnay Holmes at the end of training camp because he got that bonus for, being a day 3 pick that's hit that playing time mark. And that would save you $1.4 million of cap space due to the top 51 rule. And then bam, you're at $5 million of cap for the season. So it'll be interesting to see if Saquon Barkley getting a contract done would obviously just end it all, right? You won't have to touch anything else. But it'll be interesting to see how much money they take off of this 2023 year for Dexter Lawrence's contract and how much they free up for it. But I'm sure he's going to have a big signing bonus, so they're not going to cut it down to nothing, and nor should they. So like and subscribe to the channel. We'll have a podcast out talking about this and the defensive undrafted free agents over the weekend, so I wanted to get this quick video out, and we have all of the film breakdowns, all that good stuff. Appreciate you guys. Let's go Big Blue.